Hi, it's Future from Sewmate. Welcome to my channel. If you want to see how I make this twist front dress with a front slit, please stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. And make sure to turn on your notification bell so that each time I upload new videos, you get notified. You will need a basic bodice block to do this. I've got a tutorial on this channel on how you can make one. I'll leave a link in the description below and a link above as well. Trace around your block as usual, making sure to mark all the notches and the dart. Lift the block, draw in your dart, square in your waistline, lengthen your dress to your desired length. I'm adding 40 centimeters. Square down and square across, and square down the hip line. Adding my hem allowance 3 centimeters. At the hemline, come in by 2.5 centimeters, put a mark, draw a straight line connecting this point to the hip line to form our pencil skirt silhouette for this dress. Now with your curved ruler, smoothen the curve. Next, we're going to be closing out this dart here. So coming from the center back, we're going to take out 2 centimeters, and from the side seam we'll take out 1 centimeter to make the total of 3 centimeters dart. Next, measure 2 centimeters in from the center back along the waistline, put a mark, and then connect this point with a straight line to the center back neckline. Next, transfer the dart tip point like I'm doing here to the center back line and connect back to the 2 centimeter point. So this whole part here is not going to be included. It's going to serve as our waist shaping at the back, and then coming back to the side seam, we're just connecting the 1 centimeter point to the armhole and just blending in nicely to the hip line with a curved ruler. So this whole part here is not included in our pattern anymore. Then I'm going to be marking in my facing for the back, following through the neckline curve 6 centimeters down and just measuring all around. Next, get a fresh pattern paper, put it under your pattern, and we're going to be making a copy of our back facing. So with a tracing wheel, I'm just going to trace around the whole pattern piece there. Lift your pattern. Now we're going to cut around the pattern piece, following through the tracing wheel marks that were left there. And I'm marking my back notches to show that these are the back facings, and labeling the pattern piece. Back facing, cut 1 pair, and I add my initial. We're also going to cut 1 pair fusing. Adding my grain line parallel to the center back. Now coming to the hemline, we're going to fold it back like this so that we can get proper shaping for our hem allowance. Now we're going to cut through this line and cut around the rest of your pattern. Next, cut through your waistline. Now we're going to go ahead and add a joining seam allowance to both pattern pieces. Tape everything down. Add 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now I'm measuring 18 centimeters down from the waistline to put in my zipper notch, and go a further 1 centimeter and put another notch. Cut around your pattern. And adding a joining seam allowance to the bodies as well, 1 centimeter. Cut around your pattern. And labeling the pattern piece, back bodies. Cut 1 pair, and I put my initial. In the skirt, back skirt, cut 1 pair, and I put my initial. Now adding a green line to my skirt piece parallel to the center back, and adding a green line to my bodice piece as well parallel to the center back. Adding notches to my pattern pieces, and my back patterns are finished. Now we're moving on to the front. Trace around your block as usual, making sure to mark all the notches and the dots. Lift your block, draw in your dart, square in your waistline, lengthen your dress to your desired length. I'm adding 40 centimeters like I did with the back. Squaring a line across and squaring another line down the hip line. Adding my hem allowance 3 centimeters again. Coming in 2.5 centimeters at the hemline, connecting this point to the hip line with a straight line for the pencil skirt silhouette. So we're going to be closing out our dart for the skirt here, coming in at the side seam 3 centimeters and connecting this back to the hip line with a nice curve. Now with your curved ruler, just blend everything in nicely. At center front, we're going to go up by 20 centimeters to mark the start of our split. Coming to the waistline, along the center front, we're going to go up by 5 centimeters, put a mark. Then we're going to square a line in which is 3 centimeters long, put another mark. Then we're going to connect this point with a straight line to the bust point like I've done here. So we'll close this dart and transfer the dart value to this line here. So we'll cut through this line, and we are going to cut through the waistline as well to separate the bodies and the skirt. Then at the center front, we're going to go ahead and add the seam allowance of 1.5 centimeters since we're going to be having a center front seam line there. Just transferring everything across to the seam allowance. And cutting through the waistline. Adding a joining seam allowance to the skirt, 1 centimeter, and cutting around the pattern piece. Now folding back at the hemline to get the nice shaping at the side seam there for the hem allowance. Cut through this line. Adding notches to the pattern. And labeling the pattern. Front skirt, cut 1 pair, and I put my initial. Adding a grain line parallel to the center front. And our front skirt is finished. Cutting around our front bodies. Extend this line to the seam allowance. Now we're going to cut through this line to the bust point like I'm doing here. Cut through one leg of the dart, so close the dart and open it at the center front like this. Marking 2 separate points at the side seam. You don't need to measure anything. Mark 3 lines like I've done here. I'm going to mark out my seam allowance since I've got seam allowances added to my block. So we'll cut through these lines too, but not through the seam line there. Just make small snips there to the seam line so that we'll be able to pivot this along when it comes to the pattern making. Get a fresh pattern paper and put your pattern piece on top of it. Now we're going to be spreading all these cut lines. I'm going to be spreading all mine to 22 centimeters, so I'll be measuring from notch to notch, okay? This notch that I just highlighted, because I'm aiming to have 10 centimeter wide waistband after this, so 22 centimeters will be okay for me since I'll have 2 1 centimeter seam allowances at the end of it. So just spreading along for 22 centimeters. Tape everything down. Draw a straight line, square line across like I'm doing. That's for our waist ties. So this is 22 centimeters, which will give me 10 centimeter wide waistband or waist tie. Cut around your pattern. Get another fresh pattern paper and we're going to tape it down. We're going to add another extension to our waist tie. So extend it out like I've done here. Now measure your waistline. Whatever you get there, you're going to put that amount on the waist tie. Then add 3 centimeters to it so that our joining point for the waist tie will be located at the side seam or towards the back of our dress. Then add a joining seam allowance after that. I'm using 1 centimeter for mine. Next, add your notches to the pattern. And we're going to add a joining seam allowance for our waistline there. First, blend everything down nicely with a curved ruler. And we're going to add 1 centimeter joining seam allowance. Cut around the pattern. Now adding a grain line parallel to the original center front there. Labeling the pattern, front bodies. Cut 1 pair and I put my initial. So remember the 22 centimeters because now we're going to be drafting a further extension to the waist tie. So it will be 22 centimeters by 60 to 70 centimeters. So basically we're just drawing a rectangle of 22 centimeters by 60 to 70 centimeters, whichever you prefer to use. One side will be on fold line for me here. So I'm just going to use half, which is 35 centimeters, so I can have a 70 centimeter long waist tie. So putting it on fold will come to 70 centimeters anyway. So we're gonna cut 2 of these on fold and I put my initial. Cut around the pattern. And the waist extension is finished. Now I'm marking my facing for the front bodice, following through the neckline 6 centimeters. Getting a fresh pattern paper and tracing through the neckline facing like we did with the back. Lift your pattern. Just marking my center front there and cutting through the pattern piece, following through the tracing wheel marks. So we have a seam allowance at center front here. We don't need it at the facing because we're going to be putting it on fold, so we're going to mark it and trim it off. So center front is going to be on fold, and labeling the pattern piece, front facing, cut 1 on fold, plus 1 fusing on fold as well. Adding a grain line parallel to the center front, and all our patterns are finished. Now we're moving on to sewing. Now on to making our twist front dress. What you need are your completed patterns, your fabric, your zipper, and your cutting tools. For the fabric, I'm using this beautiful woven fabric. So now let's start cutting our fabrics. Now all our pattern pieces are cut and ready to sew. So the first thing is to go ahead and put interfacing to your facing pieces. Okay, I'm gonna put this on the side for now. So first get your back top pieces, lay them on the table with the right side facing up, and get the back skirt pieces, lay them on top of them, aligning the waistline with the right side facing down, making sure you're doing the right thing. Pin along the waistline. So we'll take this to the sewing machine and we're going to join them together at the waistline here and overlock them. Okay, I'm gonna put this on the side and I'm gonna get my front bodice. Now lay your front bodice pieces on the table with the wrong side facing up, and we're going to go ahead and attach our waistband extensions onto the bodice here. Okay, so just flip it to the right side like this for both sides. Get your extensions and we're going to pin them along with the right side facing. So we'll take this to the sewing machine and sew along these edges here to join the waistband extensions to the bodice extension piece. Okay, whilst we're there, we're also going to join our skirt to the bodices. Okay, front skirts to the bodices. Now turn your bodice patterns to the right side, and we're going to be joining our skirt pieces to the waistline of our bodices here. So now get your skirt pieces for the front. Make sure you've got the right one for the right bodice, and we're going to go ahead and align them at the waistline here and pin them along. And we're gonna take these to the sewing machine as well and sew along the waistlines and overlock them. Let's go and do all these steps together now. Now with your front dress right side up, we're going to align this part of our pattern to this part here. with the right sides facing. So fold them on top of each other like this. And now we're gonna go ahead and pin along this part and also pin along the open edge of our waistband, okay? Now repeat same with the other one. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along this edge and come along this whole edge as well up to the fold line, okay? So fold line, pivot your fabric here, go along this whole edge, pivot along here as well, and finish off up to the center front. We're going to do that with both. So you can decide to shape your waistband at the end here. You can do it now if you want to do that. So I'm gonna get this to the side. Next, get your back pieces and go ahead and overlock the center back seam here all the way through to the toe. Let's go and do that. Okay, so we've done that, and I'm gonna go ahead and clip through this point here. Now turn the waist side to the right side. Now I'm gonna take this through to the iron and just iron the waist ties nice and flat, and I'll be back. Okay, now so I finished ironing the waist ties and they look nice and neat, and we're gonna go ahead and take this to the overlocker and we're going to overlock along the center front all the way down for both pieces. I'm gonna put this on the side for now. Grab the back pieces, lay them on the table with the right sides facing. And we're going to go ahead and pin along the center back here from the hem of the dress to the zipper notches. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew the center back seam from the zipper notch to the hem, back taking at the beginning and the end, and then we're going to go ahead and install the invisible zipper. Okay, let's go and do that. Okay, so I finished sewing on the zipper to the back pieces and it's looking nice and neat. Okay, so now I'm gonna open it and I'm going to shorten the ends here. And I'm gonna put this on the side for now. Now grab your front pieces, lay them on the table with the right sides facing, aligning your center front. Now pin along the center front seam up to the slit, okay? Now I'm going to go ahead to the sewing machine and I'm going to be sewing from the top all the way to the double pins here. That's where my slit starts. So back take at the beginning and back take at the end. Let's go and do that. So I've sewn on the center front seam and ironed it open. So now I'm going to put my front dress on the table with the right side facing up. Make sure your waist ties are out of the way. And we're going to go on and grab our back piece. lay it on top of it with the right sides facing, like this. So next we're going to match our shoulder seams and pin them along. Take this to the sewing machine again and sew along the shoulder seams and overlock them. Let's go and do that. Okay, now so we've sewn on the shoulder seams, and now we're gonna go ahead and insert our sleeves. Now with your dress right side facing up, you're gonna get your sleeve pieces. Make sure you've got a right sleeve for the armhole, and just mesh the notches and pin along the armhole. Right sides facing. Now take this to the sewing machine and we're going to go ahead and sew along the armhole and overlock it. Then whilst we're there, we're also gonna get our facing pieces, lay them on the table right sides facing, pin along the shoulder seams. Take this to the sewing machine as well and sew along the shoulder seams here. When we finish with that, we're going to go ahead to the overlocker and overlock from center back all the way around the bottom edge to the other center back. Let's go and do that. So I finished sewing on the sleeves and overlocking the armhole. Now with your dress right side facing up like this, you're gonna get your facing piece and lay it on the table with the right sides facing. Stretch your zipper out like this, and we're going to match the seams and pin all along from center back to center back. So we'll take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew from center back all the way around to the other center back, and back tacking at the beginning, and let's do that. So we've sewn on our facing to the neckline. Now we're going to just trim off the corners here. Now we're gonna go back to the sewing machine and we're going to go ahead and understitch the whole neckline. So what you're going to do is to just roll your facing on top of the seam allowance here like this, and we're going to be sewing on this side of the facing, okay, all around as far as you can reach. Whilst we're there, we're also going to finish off our side seams. So just turn your dress to the wrong side, matching your side seams and making sure your waist ties are out of the way. Pin along the side seams from the sleeve hem to the dress hem. Now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and sew from the sleeve hem all the way down to the dress hem and overlock both sides. Let's go and do that. Okay, so I've sewn the side seams, overlocked them nicely, and I finished off under stitching the whole neckline. Now we're going to turn the facing to the right side, turn the corners first. And I'm gonna take this to the iron and just iron my neckline nice and flat. When I finish, I'll take this to the sewing machine and I'm just gonna go ahead and just do a ditch stitching from the right side along the shoulder here, making sure to catch the facing on this side. Okay, we do that to both the shoulders. So finally we're going to be hemming our dress and the sleeves as well. So starting with the sleeves, we're just going to go ahead and overlock right round, and we're just going to give it a blind hem stitch for both. Then for the hem of our dress, we're just gonna go ahead and overlock right round. Let's go and do that. Okay, so now I went ahead and overlocked right round my hem. So now what I'm gonna do is to just fold back the hem allowance for our slit here and just pin it down. Do the same on the other side, fold it back and pin it down. So we'll take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew at our seam allowance, just a straight line up to the end of the hem here. Do the same here from the fold line with our seam allowance to the edge of the hem here. Okay, when we finish that, we're going to turn this over to the right side like this, and we're going to do our blind hem stitch for the whole hem. Let's go and do that. Okay, so I finished sewing on the blind hem for my hem allowance here, and I did the same for the sleeves as well. They're all looking nice. Now finally we're gonna come to our hem here, and we're going to finish off our slit. So what we're going to do is just to come from the hem, do a top stitch all the way up, go about 1 centimeter to 1.5 centimeters above the slit here, and just go across and go back to the hem on the other side. Let's go and do that. Okay, now so I finished top stitching my slit here. It's looking nice and neat, and I went ahead and ironed everything nice and flat, and my dress is finished and I'm happy with the result. Thank you.